I am Shoumo Ganguly, and I am a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Yes, y'all, you know what time it is. It's time for another ResultsLeader.fm. And I know what you're here for. I know what you want. You want another amazing interview, don't you? Today's guest is going to captivate you with his stories. He's a guy that helps small businesses set a good foundation for growth. And I am certain that you are going to love this interview with Mr. Shoumo Ganguly. Let's jump in. Shoumo, welcome to the show. How are you this morning?
I am great. I'm looking forward to this and having fun.
Yes, sir. Let's give our listeners a very fast win. What book or books have you given most as a gift?
Wow. So it depends on the situation and the circumstance. As of now, like most recently, I seem to be recommending this book called Business Model Generation, which is a book on business modeling. And this is mostly to the small businesses who come my way or to startups. So this book is all about how to build up a business model. If you had asked me this question a few years back, like in my corporate life when I was with Cognizant, and there were a lot of people who were traveling to India and from the US. And I would have suggested a book called The Holy Cow, because it is a Westerner's point of view to this whole maddening subcontinent that we think is a country. So the answer would have like changes as the situation or the time progresses.
Perfect. Now, I want you to, and you're going to love this because it's our favorite topic as entrepreneurs. I want you to share a story of how an apparent failure turned to a later success for you.
Well, there's so many of them, right? Like we thrive on our failures. One of the failures, so to speak, in my corporate life. So in my corporate life, I was an outlier, was an intrepreneur, like someone who tries to innovate within the boundaries of the organization. And that was, this was with the Oracle practice of an outsourcing firm. And we were looking at what we were calling moving up the value chain. So I had prepared a pitch for my bosses where how to get into the consulting side of things as against just the IT services part of the things. And I had crafted the approach so that like it fit in along with the organization culture. And it was taking baby steps towards being recognized in the client amongst the clientele as a consulting organization. At that time, it was felt that like the market wasn't ready for my firm. We perceived as a thought leader, as a consultant in the space that I was trying to establish or pitch towards. So in one way, it could have been seen as a failure, as I made this bold move, but it didn't pan out. So it was in the standard way of looking at it would be a failure. But that experience of it had all the elements that it had of innovation, which is like as Stephen Johnson says, it is the adjacent possibilities, looking at not re-engineering or revamping the whole thing. Innovation is just almost like evolution and not revolution, where you push the things a bit forward. So that experience has served me quite a bit in my last few years, where looking at things and then seeing how to adapt to the culture that I'm working in and crafting offerings which I could take to the market based on the resources that I have and the situation at hand. That has been of great help.
I want to make sure that everybody heard that little bit that you said there. Innovation is evolution, not revolution. That
Correct.
is powerful. Now, I want to talk about investments, and I'd like to know, in your opinion, what is the best investment you have ever made?
Anytime I have invested in my knowledge, in my learning, and the ecosystem, which means the team, the resources, which help towards not only my own learning, but the collective learning, has been of. So the easy thing is to say, I will invest in myself and further my learning, right? But the best of solutions and the best of efforts would all be wasted if there wasn't an ecosystem which was ready to receive that. So it's like just not a single punch, but a 1-2, 1-2 always, where it's not only as a leader, you don't only make sure that you are great, but you make sure that you have a great team around you. So investment in myself and then quickly dissipating that the skill, knowledge, perspective to the team around me. It's a bit more complex, but it's a unified investment, I would say.
I got to tell you, man, that is refreshing because all of us, I mean, 95% of people I talk to on here, myself included, would say investing in myself. But I like that you took it out a level and put it into the team as well, because the team is a big leverage point. And so that was refreshing, brother. Thank you for that. I want you to think back now. Over the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
Wow. But over the last 5 years, so 6 years back, I made a transition from a corporate life to being on my own, setting up my own consulting firm. And I looked at, so from corporate, I moved to a small business environment, a local regional business environment. Now, a lot of people dislike the word small business because it sort of conveys a level of insignificance. To me, it doesn't. So this transition has made me look at, reevaluate, and then look at everything that I have been doing. I have made adjustments to the jargon that I use, from being able to work, have the safety net of a team, to being able to have to work on my own. And the whole thing of a huge, massive, long-term calendar window to a very short-term focused results approach has been something which I have had to move into. And results are like, you have to live today. Like, a sustainable business infrastructure or business model does not preclude the need to survive the day. This change in approach or attitude has led to, like, it is always, I can't say that I have totally gotten used to it, but things like, okay, if I'm not feeling well today, it's okay to give me a break once in a time, but I have to like, take out the self-pity and focus on what's to be done. No safety nets, no plan B over there.
That's it. That's what it's all about. So let's have some fun here. What are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
When it comes to business growth is something which we all talk about, like, to the extent of it has become, the phrase growth hacking is very, like, there are a lot of shades and nuances to it, but like, it's established. And that has led to a belief that growth only means revenue growth, top line growth. But top line growth is really not something, and even like profitability is not always the best thing. Like, the business might be profitable at the end of the year, but it has to have cash flow as it goes along. So this focus on just top line and therefore marketing and SEO and outreach to the customer and customer journey, it has become so important to the point of excluding everything else. That's something which I dislike a lot, which is for a business, there are three elements which needs to fire in tandem. There is a desirability component, there is a feasibility component, and there's a viability component. This is within the organization. Outside the organization, there's also the adaptability component. But if we talk about within the content of the business, you come to desirability, feasibility, viability. Now, desirability means it's not only outreach and reaching the customers, but also knowing what the value that you are taking to the customer, the clientele. So that the whole thing of that value is very difficult to define. It doesn't take too much time. Like anything that is difficult, we tend to believe that it takes a lot of time. It's not really time, but the perspective and a mindset of decision making. That's what makes it more difficult. So once you wrap your head around that, then comes the whole question of the 5-star ratings that we all crave for. That doesn't come from marketing or SEO. It comes from the quality of service that we provide. That's the feasibility aspect of the business, like the supply chain and everything else, how we deliver. So if we just focus on sales and marketing, we might be setting ourselves for failure because we are over-promising, under-delivering. And once that thing happens, then the viability, which is the money part of the business, might also take a hit. In the long term, it will take a hit, but in the short term, you might have a nest egg which will not let you see it. So in a short answer, the hype and focus just on the marketing part of things, which is supposedly the touchstone or whatever you call it, the answer to getting more sales and therefore solving all problems. That's, I think, not the best advice that we can give to our clients.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a public service announcement. We're going to get right back into this show, but I wanted to ask you a question. If you have been listening to the show for any amount of time and you've picked up even one single tip, then I need your help. Get the word out. Tell people about resultsleader.fm. Share it on social media. Share it on your email. Share it anywhere. Hashtag resultsleaderfm. Now let's jump back into the interview. Let's talk about results. Why do results matter?
You know, the most watched TED Talk is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And when you talk about why, like why is a business in business? Why do you do what you do? That is, I think, the core thing of what we call results. So when Harley Davidson goes to the market, it doesn't say that we have so much of horsepower, we have whatever, they say that they bring the freedom of the open road, right? So in my mind, when we get into a business, that's the why part of the business, right? And the why is directly related. So the word result is not a metric by itself, right? It has its content, which has a context to it. We tend to think of results as hard numbers and measures only. Just numbers and measures are not adequate. If you are driving a car and you look at the dashboard, you need to know that if you just look at the speedometer and say, I'm going at a great speed, that's not enough. Right? You need to know how to control it, which is the process behind it and the context behind it. So again, results are those numbers and hard data and stuff, but the context is very important. And to be able to correlate it, it is the why. So if you have connected those dots properly, then if you have results, it inherently means that you are delivering the why of the business. And therefore, that's why it is important.
Man, I think that our listeners are going to have to go back and unpack that because there was a lot there. But I hear you, man. The why. Why are we doing this? What is the experience? And that experience is the results that we're getting for our people. And that's also our results with the top line revenue and everything else. So I dig it, man. And this is one of the reasons why I knew I had to have you on the show because you paint these pictures, man. So in the last 5 years, what new realization has helped you get better results for your clients?
Again, I spoke about the transition from my corporate life to the more local small business world, right? And initially, when I came to this world, my mindset was still of the corporate world. So there were a lot of stuff that I used to do in my corporate life, which we would put down to cost of doing business. So things like developing a business case. And I remember this was an implementation at Toyota. And the time and effort as a firm that we spend on building up the business case was about 6 months or something like that. And it produced a deliverable and whatnot. But that was all unpaid. That was business development effort. In this time that I now live in, those are things which are deliverables in themselves. It's like walking into a food court and you see each of the stalls, outlets go around providing free samples, right? So in my corporate life, almost a whole meal would be a sample if there were enough number of people who would come in. But in this world that I now live in, some of those samples are itself things which are on sale. So being able to break it down and not look at humongous projects, but small bite-sized offerings, which will be effective and make an impact in the life of that business for that day, for that week. That's the change in perspective and mindset which I have made most. Like, what is it that people will expect? As we speak, even last year, I would have resisted. People tell me all the time, Shoumo, you are great with LinkedIn. And the reason that I get that feedback is because I don't teach the how to do whatever on LinkedIn, but more like why you are using LinkedIn. So I don't say that you need to have a great headline, or I don't say that you need to have keywords in your headline. I correlate it with what is your style of using LinkedIn? Do you comment a lot? Are you a passive user? Do you just like a lot and not really comment and share? Depending on these factors, I would prescribe this is the best approach like the headline, there's a strategy behind the headline. Now, this is something which I don't get to hear from a lot of people. Similarly, I don't get to hear a lot from, like, everyone talks about profile optimization, but no one talks about how to get a great LinkedIn social selling index score with the free version. And because I have these conversations, people recommend that Shoumo is a LinkedIn expert. But I have been resisting this label of LinkedIn expert for a while because I had this perception that I was a business consultant. Therefore, I should not stoop down to the level of a tool expert. But then I realized that, hey, that's all in my mind and in my head. If that's what is the person who is looking for and is going to help that my client in this week, in this month, to start a conversation and get traction, like, that is invaluable. And I need to be able to take myself out of the equation, bring down the scale of offerings or the grandiose plan that I had and really make it topical and relevant to the population or the audience that I'm serving.
And there's so much there. Number one, how to get rid of that ego coming from big corporate America. I love that. That was classic. And then give people what they want, right? Give them what they
Right.
want. And then when they come in, you can give them what they need, but you have to sell what they want and then give them what they need. So those are all great lessons. What area of your business would you like better results?
I didn't have the runway a lot of people would have when they're earlier in their career and they start off on their own, right? I jumped into this when I was around 55-ish or so. So my approach to business has been, I have put a lot of emphasis on building up good partnerships. So, because I myself didn't have a long runway and the concept of long runway and time at hand, obviously, I had some bad benchmarks of corporate America, but nevertheless. So, I would love to have better partnerships with like minded consultants. And when I say like minded consultants who serve the same audience, but may not necessarily do the same thing that I do. So it's complementary services and offerings and a way to be able to connect with them better, which in turn really means that I need to have better habits of keeping notes and following up and take away this excuse of, oh, I'm all alone. So how effective can I be? So that's the learning process that I'm going through. So it's more inward than outward as of now.
What results are you most proud of?
Having been able to build teams, people, having been able to make clients feel that they are important. So my whole first comes the mindset and the satisfaction which is deep inside us. When once that takes place, financial and other measures become almost like a byproduct and it happens automatically. Like it's this whole thing of that happiness project that we hear of, which talks about like you don't do things to be happy. You first decide to be happy and therefore rest of the things follow. It's a very difficult thing to wrap your mind around. So as in a similar manner, whenever I can build up self-esteem of another person, give another client, another person who's a client or a colleague better comfort. One of the best awards that I got in my corporate life would be when my team would come in, corner me into a room, give me a thank you card and a small gift like a pen, and thank me for creating the environment which allowed them to grow while they were working with me. So those are moments which I cherish most. So building up a team and then building up people is what are the results which I like to. So I'd like to sort of go on a bit more on this vein, on this note. I was at this job fair which a colleague or another person of a contact of mine had organized. And there were all these tables, all these prospective employers, and I was saying hi to them, chatting with them. There was also this college which had the university was there. And I was asking them like about stuff, and I was asking, do you have guest instructors who come in and talk about business modeling and stuff like that? There are certain things which I believe that the academia hasn't still yet been able to get to the level which the industry sort of needs them to be at. And I was chatting about it. And he was telling me that, like, so do you have a PhD? Do you have my master's, et cetera, et cetera? And I asked him that, like, but why is that important to teach? Have you realized that the officer cadets are all put through a boot camp and they graduate because of the efforts of the drill sergeant? The guy who turns out and trains officers is not an officer himself. So the whole thing of the ability to produce, in that case, the results that that drill sergeant produces are all these officer cadets. And it does not mean that because that person is in this exalted rank of a major general or whatever, therefore that person is able to produce all these results of the cadet. So if it's not really within the scope of the answer of the question that you added, but just a slight flavor that of the process of producing results, maybe may surprise us at times. So.
I dig it, man. I dig it. So I know that our listeners are going to want to hear more from you after listening to this interview. Where can they find out more about you?
So the best place would be to look me up on LinkedIn, connect with me over there. By the way, if anyone sends me an invitation on LinkedIn because of listening to your podcast, they should mention that they have heard, like they came across me or they came to know me at your podcast. That sets the context of the conversation. Otherwise, it would be a stray request. The other place where they could go to is this platform called Alignable. Alignable is a new platform, which it's not really new, but it is relatively lesser known as compared to LinkedIn. And if they are on Alignable, they should look up Obligent Consulting as against my name. And that's how they will get to my business profile. Those are the two best ways which will ultimately get them to my website, which is not really the most current place to get to. But LinkedIn would be a good place to start. And definitely mention the Results Leader FM podcast.
So we will absolutely share links to Shoumo Ganguly in the notes. I appreciate you, brother. I knew you were going to be a fun interview when we had the pre-interview. I'm so glad that you were here. And Results Leaders, thank you for tuning in. We will be back in your earbuds next week. That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.